Good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar brought to you by UM6P and Innovex. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Manal Bernoussi, and I'll be your moderator for this session. Welcome to you all as you are joining us. Let's give just a few moments to our audience to jump in. We are streaming today on UM6P platforms, on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So wherever you are joining us from, please hit that like button to signal to more people to join in, and drop us a message. Drop us a message to say hi in the comments section. Tell us your name, tell us where you're connecting from. There is a whole team back here that is going through all your comments. So please use that to interact with us, okay? Now, in light of the tragic earthquake that struck our nation just over a week ago, our thoughts and prayers remain with the victims and their families during this challenging time. While it has certainly shaken our foundation, it has also revealed an unwavering determination and solidarity among us all within the community and abroad. There's one quote that I read this weekend, and it really resonated with me, so I want to share it with you all. And it says, "Grief is not an emotion to move on from. It is a reality to move forward with." So today, as we gather for this webinar, we acknowledge the pain and the loss while also looking forward to building a more sustainable future. So without further ado, I want you to please join me in extending a very warm welcome to our esteemed panelists whose expertise will guide us through this conversation. Today, we are privileged to have Mr. Samir Rashidi, the Acting General Manager of IRESEN, Research Institute for Solar Energies and New Energies. He's a renowned expert in renewable energy, specializing in Power-to-X, green chemistry, energy storage, and solar technologies. Samir holds a PhD in hydrogen, and he's actively shaping Morocco's green hydrogen sector through his involvement both at the Moroccan cluster of green hydrogen and within the CGM. Samir Rashidi, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you so much.
Mr. Amin Hussein is also here with us today. He is an engineer specializing in energy. He currently holds the position of Vice President Hydrogen Solutions at Innovex, with over 16 years of experience in the industrial gas industry. Amin has an extensive experience in the field of hydrogen. Since 2018, he has been actively involved in strategically developing the hydrogen economy in Europe, bridging the gap between renewable power uptake and transforming industries towards climate sustainability. Amin, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Manal. Thank you for having me.
Today, we're also pleased to have Mr. Hisham Slaoui. He's taking part in this conversation. He is Business Development Director at Innovex, responsible for establishing the battery subsidiary. He has been involved in the development of the automotive ecosystem since 2004. He particularly led the initial approvals in Morocco for Renault and Stellantis. He also spearheaded, on behalf of Stellantis, the establishment of the first test center in Africa for conducting physical tests related to automotive development and validations, which were previously carried out abroad. Such an exciting experience we'll be digging into later on. Hisham, it's a pleasure to have you with us today. So, welcome to you all, gentlemen. Today's conversation will be in English or French, so please feel free to use the language that you're most comfortable with. We really want to aim that everyone can actively participate and engage in this discussion. We'll be spending the next 75 minutes together, so I encourage you all in the audience to please submit your questions at any time in the comments section on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook, and we'll address some of those by the end of this session. All right, so let's dive in. As I mentioned earlier, experts worldwide emphasize the need for a net zero future. And we do believe this is crucial for our future and for the future of our children, obviously. And we are here today to discuss that from an African perspective. But before we dive into how Africa can make substantial contributions towards a sustainable future, I believe that setting the stage for the discussion and acknowledging the historical context and the need for equitable and inclusive solutions is crucial. So my first question goes to you, Dr. Samir Rashidi. Historically, African nations have contributed far less to global greenhouse gas emissions compared to many developed countries. We're talking less than 4% of global gas emissions, right? However, and we have proof of that each year, they often bear a greater share of the consequences of climate change. So in that context, requiring net zero from Africa when most countries are battling with mitigation and adaptation strategies can seem a little challenging or unsettling. Can you please help us articulate the reality on the ground and set the context from an African standpoint?
Well, thank you very much, dear Manal, for enabling me to somehow echo this kind of position of lots of African experts and friends that I have in my network. Sometimes when we push a little bit hard the green things, the net zero, etc., for African countries, it's sometimes feel like a kind of paradoxal that a growing nation, let's say the African nation as a whole, is asked to make some frog leaps in terms of energy transition and also reduction of carbon emissions, while it didn't or they haven't contributed as much. I would say that would be, in my opinion, and also in the opinion of lots of my fellow Africans friends, related or correlated towards the engagement of the advanced continents or the advanced countries in terms of tech transfer and also funding or co-founding, helping co-founding this energy transition in those countries. So because in many African countries we have lots of resources, mainly fossil resources, but also resources for batteries, etc., cobalt and or other really strategic, let's say, materials. But it may cost less for African countries to grow based on their fossil resources than to think afterwards about energy transition and lowering their emissions. So that, let's say, that would be the easy way to do things. And in order to make them decide to do differently, we need to bear in mind that there should be a win-win. There should be a win-win between. I don't like the word compromise because it's not very positive for either parts. But to have really a win-win between those advanced countries and developing countries like the African nations, and this is why. In my point, lots of these efforts will, and I'm not objective about that, I'm sorry, will go through innovation and trying to adapt at first the technologies that are out there in order to achieve net zero. If you look into the reports of the IEA about the net zero scenario, you will find that many technologies that will help the humanity achieve this net zero target are not here yet on the market, are still under development or doesn't exist or don't exist still. So this is why, in my opinion, a very first, let's say, point for the African nations is to start with R&D, training, developing the human capital, localizing expertise, and innovation would be key and vital to have this kind of engagement and also autonomy that we are looking for our fellow African countries.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Samir Rashidi, for setting the stage, and we'll get a little bit later on into the solutions. Now, let's hear from you, Amin Hussein. What's your perspective on this? Considering your extensive experience in the field of sustainability. What is your perspective on the points made by Dr. Samir Rashidi regarding the African context, and what is specific about our continent?
Thank you, dear Manal, and thank you, Dr. Samir, because I think you are rightfully raising what anyone could ask as a question. What is our role in the decarbonization process globally? What should be the burden also of that decarbonization process that we Africans and all the African nations should have? And I think, first we need to set the scene. As you pointed out in the beginning, this is a global issue, and irrespective about how it built up to now, I think that the consequences are for all, and we feel them a lot in Africa, where there is clear effects of climate change on the African continent. Now, I think we have also in Africa few things that, for me, they are the DNA of sustainability, and we always had them. In Africa, we all know about frugality as one of the main aspects of the way we live. So we may call it efficiency, and efficiency contributes a lot actually to mitigating climate change. That has always been a way of living in Africa, where frugal living was let's say something that we all embrace, and we know of the value of things that we buy or that we consume. So we have always, throughout the time, made sure that we are not over-consuming, and I think that this is already something that, from a sustainability perspective, today we are very much addressing to all the efficiency initiatives. Now, what is also a reality is that all manufactured products, or most of the manufactured products in Africa, are imported. Hence, there is a huge part of the emissions of the African continent that is imported due to, let's say, value chains that are not localized in Africa, in other countries, in developed countries, and those manufactured products that have emissions, part of their own manufacturing process, then are imported into Africa by consumers. So I think this is a way also to say that if there is an energy transition, okay, and if we want to have full leverage over the emissions that are within the scope of the African continent, we should have a clear impact on the manufactured products that we have in Africa. We should be able to influence the way these products are manufactured and how sustainable they are throughout the chain. And here I'm teasing a bit to what we will probably discuss a bit later about how can we take, let's say, the opportunity of the energy transition to rebuild some of the industrial value chains that are required, and that thanks to the sustainability objectives and the net zero objective, we have this opportunity to really tackle those value chains here in Africa, and to seize the opportunity to also localize part of those value chains. Now, one great advantage that also I want to mention for Africa is that what was the weakness of the past may be also the strength of the future. We don't have the bias of stranded assets. When you are in a value chain, when you are in an industrial setup, we know that investments usually last for 20, 30 years. So it's very hard actually to switch to new technologies, to switch to new ways of doing things when you have already assets and all ecosystems that are already in place. Now, what was the weakness for Africa in the past, not having all of these components, maybe also the opportunity in the future to directly shift toward a less carbon intensive industry, toward a greener industry, especially for Africa that has a lot of those resources available, and a population that is eager to tackle this challenge.
That's a great point. Thank you very much, Amin. And we will indeed talk a little bit later on the opportunity for Africa to leapfrog and to lead another path, a path that is really specific to Africa. So I just want to take a very quick moment to say hi again and welcome to all the audience that is joining us. It's really wonderful to see all your comments flowing in. Hello to you, Murad from California, Gregory, all of you, Khalid, yes, Mohammed, we are praying for Morocco, absolutely. To your question, Abalil, who's asking, what is the topic we're discussing right now? We are discussing unlocking Africa's potential. We are discussing ways to leverage the African assets for a net zero contribution. So the topic is sustainability today. All right, so keep the questions flowing in. N'hésitez surtout pas à insérer vos questions en français aussi. As I said, this conversation is going to be in English and in French, so please use the language you're most comfortable with. We have started by recognizing the specific contexts and challenges in Africa. I want us now to shift our focus to the second section and explore the reasons why sustainability is a fundamental factor for the development of the African continent today. Je me tourne vers vous, Monsieur Hicham Slaoui. Comme je disais, je vais jongler entre le français et l'anglais. Je voudrais vraiment qu'un maximum de personnes dans l'audience puissent aussi s'adresser à nous. L'Afrique est tellement diverse par ses langues et aussi par ses perspectives. Donc, je souhaiterais vraiment un maximum d'interaction auprès de l'audience. Ma question pour vous, Monsieur Hicham Slaoui, en quoi est-ce que la sustainability est un enjeu clé pour le développement du continent africain?
Merci beaucoup, Manal, pour l'introduction et merci pour cette question. Effectivement, en fait, je pense que le développement durable consiste à répondre en fait aux besoins des générations actuelles sans nuire, bien évidemment, aux générations futures. Est-ce que c'est une réalité? Ce qu'on constate, ce n'est pas vraiment le cas. Parce qu'en gros, aujourd'hui, surtout dans le passé, il y avait beaucoup de dégagement de CO2, des industriels au niveau des pays, des Européens, des Occidentaux en général. Et en même temps, on remarque des millions d'Africains qui n'ont même pas accès à la nourriture, et ce qui est problématique. Aujourd'hui, je pense que ça commence à changer et on pourrait le faire en créant de la valeur ajoutée. Et en Afrique, on a réellement les moyens pour le faire. Comme déjà expliqué par les collègues, on a déjà les matières premières. L'Afrique est riche par beaucoup de matières premières. On a parlé de la batterie, mais pas que. On va trouver toutes les matières premières qu'on pourrait utiliser dans l'industrie en Afrique. On a des conditions climatiques très favorables pour l'énergie renouvelable. Et l'Afrique, elle est aussi riche par ses hommes, qui peuvent apprendre très vite et développer beaucoup de choses rapidement. Donc, je pense qu'il est indispensable pour tout le monde, je dirais tous les pays, de se pencher sur cette question et de créer rapidement le maximum de valeur ajoutée en transformant ces matières premières localement, en créant maximum de valeur ajoutée dans les différents domaines de création de l'énergie renouvelable, pour éviter justement des problèmes futurs qu'on pourrait éviter avec le développement de ces pays, justement, ce continent africain qui a tardé à se développer. Mais je pense, quand je vois justement l'exemple du Maroc, je pense qu'on s'est bien développé ces dernières années, et c'est grâce à ces hommes. Je pense qu'il faudrait juste donner l'opportunité aux Africains et on est en mesure de rattraper le retard rapidement. Et bien évidemment, il faudrait avoir la volonté des donneurs d'ordre à l'échelle mondiale.
Absolument, je partage tout à fait ce point de vue. La richesse, elle est évidemment dans les ressources naturelles, certes, mais dans les ressources humaines, dans le talent pool dont dispose notre continent. Je pense qu'effectivement, aujourd'hui, la sustainability est un enjeu clé et indispensable pour le développement de notre continent. Et il s'agit, et c'est ce que nous faisons aujourd'hui dans ces panels, de sensibiliser les différents acteurs sur le continent, sur la nécessité de mettre en place les différentes procédures, les performance standards de la Banque mondiale, par exemple, qui vont dans ce sens-là. Ça devient aussi un enjeu clé pour lever du financement. Aujourd'hui, il devient quasiment impossible de lever du financement à l'échelle internationale si on ne prend pas compte de ces enjeux-là. Et puis, c'est aussi un enjeu clé, comme vous l'avez cité, Sislaoui, pour créer de la valeur localement. Effectivement, si on prend un exemple d'une coopérative qui va respecter un certain nombre de normes environnementales et sociales et qui va mettre en place des mécanismes de traçabilité, ces produits pourraient se trouver sur les étalages des marchés internationaux, des marchés européens, et qui dit export dit forcément création de valeur bien plus que si c'est vendu localement seulement. Et puis bien entendu, si on parle aussi dans le cadre de la lutte contre l'insécurité alimentaire sur le continent africain, eh bien le fait de renforcer les food systems en Afrique passe forcément par une mise en place de mécanismes qui soient respectueux des enjeux environnementaux. Donc, cette notion, on ne peut plus effectivement être perçue comme étant superflue ou comme étant des coûts supplémentaires dont on ne voit pas forcément un retour sur investissement, et il devient clair et évident que c'est nécessaire pour qu'on puisse se développer et atteindre le niveau de développement et d'expansion que nous avons tous en tête. Merci beaucoup, Si Shamslaoui, pour ce partage. Je vois qu'il y a un certain nombre de questions qui tombent, donc nous allons adresser ces questions-là à la fin. N'hésitez surtout pas. Je rappelle que le streaming est diffusé à la fois sur YouTube, sur Facebook et sur LinkedIn, et donc n'hésitez pas à soumettre vos questions sur ces plateformes-là. I'm going to switch back to English now. All right, so we will move on to the solutions. The African continent has significant assets, as you just mentioned. All three of you, the natural resources, the sunlight, the vast land areas, and the youthful population. Amin Hussein, this question is for you. How can we build environmental and social sustainability around economic sustainability? Because that's the main challenge, right? The task is challenging. We're talking about huge projects that require a change of paradigm and a change of existing practices. So how can we achieve this?
Thank you. It's a vast question. I will try to give an answer to that. But before diving into those elements, let me start by saying that the way we do business, our business models, have to also accommodate basically those objectives that we have. And I think in Africa, we have already demonstrated a lot of creativity in terms of business models. I think this creativity have led already many players in Africa to adopt what we call inclusive business, which is a fair share of the value among the various players in the business. And that is typically, for me, a source of inspiration when we talk about how can we have social impact. We need to redesign basically the way we see the business from traditional stakeholders that we, of course, will always play a major role in the way we structure those businesses. But we have also to incorporate in the way we build those business models a social impact on how can we, let's say, have a real transformative impact to the environment in which we create those businesses. And let's call it a revolution. I mean, sustainability is bringing a new era of industrial development, one that is meant to rely less and less on fossil fuels, one that is also adopting new technologies that are more efficient, but also that is targeting markets and consumers that have a change in their behavior. And I think that all these elements, we can find, pieces of them in all African countries. We have indeed, let's say, as was mentioned in the beginning, abundant resources that help us to have less carbon intensity in the energy that we use. We have also a population that is growing and that is eager to embrace new challenges in terms of employment, in terms of way of conducting business. I mean, it's up to us also to give these opportunities for development, for education, for training, for upskilling to the existing workforce, but also for creativity in terms of business models to unleash basically the potential that we have in Africa. But of course, we have to think also Africa for Africa. And there are things that we need to customize that we need to adopt in terms of perspective for our own development, that cannot rely only on, let's say, made solutions that we would, let's say, import into Africa. So we need those capabilities in Africa to develop R&D, new technology, to leverage the resources at their best usage, and to develop new business fundamentals that will be, the best fit for the needs of each and every country in Africa, because we don't have all the same, let's say, growth in terms of speed. We don't have the same resources, but we have a lot of the pieces that we need globally to tackle the climate change. So this is, in a nutshell, for me, let's say the global approach. Now, very practically, I think we cannot do it without creating in Africa local champions. We need local champions of their industry that will have, let's say, this responsibility in terms of building the industrial ecosystems that will serve to develop, let's say, the emerging industries that will transform the various value chains that we need in Africa. And I think those local champions, they of course need the vision, the local support to drive this change. I think it can only come from those local champions. And it needs also you mentioned it, Manal, it needs also the support of the international community and the level playing field for them to strive as well in terms of developing their ecosystems that are deeply rooted in their local communities.
I appreciate your input, Amin Hussein, indeed. Now, Samir Rashidi, as we are focusing on the solutions, can you share insights on the role of research and innovation in advancing sustainable energy solutions in Africa?
Well, thank you, Mana, for this question. Well, my point on that is that the R&D and innovation in general, as we know, as R&D professionals, we have three main, goals. R&D tries to cut down costs, increase, let's say, quality, increase performance, and also increase safety. So this is in the industry, or what all researchers are trying to do in anyhow we could fit into one of these three or four boxes. For the African countries or the developing countries, it's I would say not the only one, but it's a key leverage for resilience and sovereignty. This is a sort of a vector to learn how to grow, how to integrate modernity into production systems, into any kind of services we are also giving to our own markets or also our citizens. So the idea, in my opinion, is that R&D should be used as an enabling factor to, at a first level, to demystify technology, in my opinion, for energy transition, demystify technology, trying to test, adapt also, because lots of those technologies are developed elsewhere than the places where they are tested or where they are sold. So we need to be aware of that, and also in another level probably try to bring our own, let's say, local technology. As Amin said before, we are known in Africa with frugality, with efficiency. So we could probably not be at the high tech at the beginning, neither to the low tech, but as Minister Bah said in a meeting, the right tech for Africans, the right tech for Africa, that are really adapted to the local context, because it will grow and be constrained by the local boundary conditions which are, of course, different from the conditions of where normally modern technology is developed. So this, in a way, will, at the first level, as I said, build expertise and know-how, qualify the human capital that is key. We can speak about cobalt, petrol, diamonds, gold, etc. But the key resource for the development is human being, is the human capital. This is key. So we need to have this human capital that is qualified, that has learned how to do things and how to adapt the technology and how to come up with own solutions that are more efficient and more adapted to the local context, using, for example, local materials for construction, trying to also adapt some boundary conditions for new technologies, etc. Because we have our own constraints. We have lots of sun and wind, but we have a lot of dust in some places. We have a lot of UV, for example, for the PV panels. So we need to be aware of that, and for this, human capital is key. Then the second level is also to help trying what Amin said at the beginning, to co-localize, not localize probably at the beginning, but co-localize a part of some value chains based also on a win-win. We are not seeking, and this is also my opinion, we are not seeking to be in an autarcy or a sort of closed doors. We need to be also subscript into our own environments, with Europe, with the US, with Japan, with Korea. All those advanced countries are also looking for some leverages for sustainable development, to keep growing sustainably, and we could find this win-win together when we are discussing about new technologies for sustainable development. So this is, in my opinion, how we could use R&D and innovation in our developing countries to make shortcuts and leapfrogs, as you mentioned, dear Manal, at the beginning.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I love the distinction that you made about us not aiming for high tech nor low tech, but the right tech, right, what we need for our continent. So I see a lot of fantastic contributions coming in from LinkedIn. Please keep them coming. These are entirely part of this conversation and we value your input. Hicham Barqi dit ce qu'il faut pour avancer. Nous sommes tous d'accord que les ressources sont là. C'est l'engagement total des responsables à travers le développement du secteur des recherches et les inventions. Merci, cher Hicham Barqi, pour votre contribution. Continuez à interagir avec nous, continuez à nous faire part de vos inputs. Enfin, je suis certaine qu'il y a de nombreux experts aussi qui sont parmi nous aujourd'hui et votre input est tout à fait important pour ces dialogues. Alors, je me tourne vers vous, Monsieur Hicham Slaoui. Je le disais en introduction, vous avez joué un rôle important dans l'établissement de l'écosystème automobile au Maroc et dans l'émergence de cette industrie. Et l'expérience du secteur automobile a prouvé son succès, justement par l'émergence d'un véritable écosystème qui, lui, agit comme un catalyseur pour le développement de l'industrie. Comment est-ce qu'on peut appliquer les enseignements tirés de ce secteur au domaine des énergies renouvelables et de la durabilité? Et puis, plus globalement, j'aimerais bien savoir quel type d'acteurs, qu'ils soient nationaux ou internationaux, seraient nécessaires pour créer un écosystème similaire dans le domaine qui nous intéresse aujourd'hui.
Merci, Manal. Effectivement, en fait, j'ai vu un petit peu le développement de l'industrie automobile depuis 2004. Et il faut bien évidemment des conditions indispensables pour la réussite du développement d'un écosystème. Parce que quand on regarde par exemple l'automobile, ça a commencé par exemple en 2004. On était à une capacité installée de moins de 100 000 véhicules et puis un taux d'intégration locale inférieur à 30%. Avec une dizaine d'entreprises qui opèrent dans le domaine de l'automobile. Et ça a évolué depuis. Les conditions indispensables. Il y a une condition qui est très importante parce que si on veut développer un écosystème, il faut avoir un marché derrière. L'opportunité qu'on avait dans le passé justement, c'est qu'on avait Renault à Somaka, à Casablanca, avec de mémoire une capacité inférieure à 100 000 véhicules, et puis il y a une nouvelle capacité installée à Tanger avec 400 000 véhicules. C'est l'effet de l'échelle, donc on a du volume, il y a plus d'intérêt pour les opérateurs et les équipementiers mondiaux. Donc Renault a contribué au développement de cet écosystème en intéressant justement les différents fournisseurs. Petit à petit, on cherchait à améliorer ce taux d'intégration locale qui était à 30%, bah, ça passait à 40, à 50. Et aujourd'hui, on est environ, je pense pour Renault, à peu près peut-être 65%. Et c'est ça le développement d'écosystème, initialement qui est fait déjà à travers Renault et qui a continué justement à travers un deuxième constructeur, ce qui a permis encore d'accélérer le développement de l'écosystème parce que c'est normal, il y a plus de besoins, il y a un marché, il y a besoin de développer la compétence. Ça, c'est la deuxième condition indispensable. Parce qu'on a dit, il faut un marché, il faut un donneur d'ordre installé au Maroc, mais aussi il faudrait avoir la compétence. Avec l'arrivée de Stellantis, anciennement appelé PSA, Peugeot Citroën, donc en 2019, la capacité du Maroc en production passe à 700 000 véhicules, ce qui a permis le développement encore et encore de cet écosystème. Une valeur ajoutée supplémentaire, ce qui était dit par les collègues, par Amine et Samir justement, c'est l'innovation et la R&D. On n'avait pas ça au Maroc auparavant. Avec l'arrivée de Stellantis, on crée un centre R&D avec aujourd'hui, je pense, 1000 personnes et 4500 dans l'écosystème Stellantis, qui permet de créer encore plus de valeur ajoutée. C'est un bon début. Et aujourd'hui, si on regarde un petit peu l'écosystème automobile, on voit qu'on développe ce taux d'intégration, on crée de valeur ajoutée de plus en plus et j'espère que ça va continuer. Il suffit de vous dire qu'aujourd'hui, il y a plusieurs voitures qui sont montées ailleurs en Europe et qui sont validées au Maroc, dans ce centre R&D, que ce soit à Casa ou à Ouazim, ce qui est bien. Ça permettra aux Marocains de monter en compétence. C'est ça ce qu'il faut justement pour le développement de tout écosystème. Tout ça, la montée en compétences, le taux d'intégration nous permet aujourd'hui au Maroc d'être plus compétitif. Ce qui était les chiffres qui étaient annoncés par le ministère, je pense qu'on est au moins parmi les 3 pays les plus compétitifs. Quelquefois, j'entends deuxième, bon, à confirmer, mais de toutes les façons, ce qui est sûr, on est au moins parmi les 3 pays les plus compétitifs. Troisième condition, il faudrait qu'on soit justement compétitif. Le développement de l'écosystème devrait se faire de la même façon. Maintenant, bien évidemment, il faudrait des champions nationaux. Et je pense, Innovic, justement, avec UM6P et le groupe OCP, aujourd'hui, c'est ce qu'on essaie de développement parce qu'on veut créer des champions nationaux pour la transition énergétique. Sur toutes les verticaux qu'on remarque, que ce soit au niveau énergie renouvelable, que ce soit au niveau agriculture, au niveau digital, et toutes les verticaux, justement, on cible justement ce développement durable pour essayer de créer de l'innovation avec une technologie qui existe aujourd'hui à l'UM6P, qu'il faudrait bien évidemment développer à l'échelle industrielle, et puis en même temps en ciblant bien évidemment des partenariats qui sont indispensables, parce qu'aujourd'hui, on est ce qu'on est. On commence au développement de l'écosystème, on a nos compétences, on a les moyens, on a nos matières premières qu'on pourrait utiliser. Maintenant, c'est un partenariat aussi d'un donneur d'ordre et puis des off-takers qu'il faudrait chercher pour s'intéresser au Maroc. Et on a des atouts au Maroc parce qu'on a beaucoup d'accords de libre-échange. C'est un atout. Et on a de la concurrence. Et en même temps, avec les moyens qui sont donnés aujourd'hui pour ce champion et au niveau Innovix pour le développement des entreprises dans le cadre de la transition énergétique, ça sera que bénéfique. Et puis, ça accélérera certainement le développement et la création de la valeur ajoutée dans le cadre de la transition énergétique.
Merci beaucoup pour ce partage, Monsieur Hicham Slaoui. Effectivement, beaucoup de choses à tirer de cette expérience réussie qui est celle du secteur automobile. Nous allons continuer à creuser un petit peu ce qui est en cours et les expériences desquelles on peut s'inspirer. I want us to move on now to the next segment where we will dive into concrete examples. I see some people on LinkedIn, also Facebook, asking about concrete projects going on. So we're moving on now to concrete examples and initiatives that you're each addressing in your fields of expertise. Amin Hussein, as an expert in hydrogen and VP Hydrogen in Innovex, can you tell us a little bit more about Innovex to start with, and what are some of the green hydrogen projects that you're undertaking, and how do these projects fit into an overall sustainability approach for the OCP group?
Thank you, Manal. Yes, happy to speak about that. Of course, I will not spend too long about hydrogen because we have another expert on the call, Dr. Samir. He can jump in whenever he wants. But first, just setting up the scene, Innovex is indeed part of the UM6P University, and it is a company that has a mandate on, of course, developing new businesses. I think Hisham mentioned that, but also investing in those new businesses to support their growth. Now, it's not any business. I think what we want is really to prime the ecosystem development. I think my colleague Hisham pointed out is that if we need to have an engine in the ecosystem, and we are happy to play that role in the beginning to prime those ecosystems. And hydrogen is typically one of those ecosystems, and I have the chance to lead that. So when we think about hydrogen, I think it is a recipe that has all the ingredients that we have mentioned before. First of all, if we talk about hydrogen in Morocco specifically, but also in many African countries, it is a molecule that is, as we know it, a vector for the energy transition, meaning that it is not energy per se, it is a way of transporting or way of dealing with energy. And it has a lot of key attributes that make it very useful actually for decarbonizing a lot of parts of the industry. So of course we see it as Innovex being part of the OCP group from the angle of the fertilizers, and we see this hydrogen as a key contribution to the production of green ammonia, ammonia that is today mostly produced globally actually through the conversion of natural gas. Hence, it has emissions that are linked to it. And we think that decarbonizing that ammonia with the manufacturing of green hydrogen and then green ammonia is actually a very good pathway in terms of decarbonization for the fertilizer industry. So now fertilizers, it is if we manage to decarbonize fertilizers, we are also giving sustainability into let's say the whole nutrition of the population globally, and how we tackle the sustainability when it comes to the agriculture and the agro business. So this is the way we looked at it, and we thought that with all those good ingredients that we have in Morocco, such as a perfect conjunction of solar power availability and wind power availability, both renewable, of course, but also the having an industrial champion in the fertilizer business that is OCP. Those are let's say the ingredients of the perfect storm in terms of building ecosystems, right? So we thought that this is really a strategic element that we need to developing projects in Morocco to produce low carbon hydrogen and renewable ammonia that will basically help to decarbonize the fertilizers of the OCP group. And for that, OCP have been very I would say, ambitious and have announced already its target to produce 1 million ton of green ammonia by 2027, which we are actively working on in terms of developing the renewable resources, but also, as we highlighted throughout this panel, in terms of understanding how we can not only produce ammonia, but also build an industrial strategy around it. And I think this is the key, let's say, challenge that keep us busy every day. It's not to produce ammonia, but to have an industrial vision around green hydrogen and green ammonia. And that industrial vision, it starts at the university, it starts with the researchers, it starts in R&D, in training, in also developing, let's say, the business models and the partnerships that will allow us to be a contributor to that value chain and not only a user of ammonia into the fertilizers.
Thank you very much, Amin, for sharing that with us. Very, very interesting indeed to get an understanding of the overview of what you're working on right now. I see Samir Khobzi on LinkedIn who's asking, are there currently any projects on smart and connected communities where R&D is implemented in infrastructure, energy, transportation, and communication? I want to give the floor to you, Dr. Samir Rashidi. What specific initiatives or projects are you currently involved in to support the development of renewable energy infrastructure in Africa?
Well, thank you for that question, dear Manal. At Irizen, we have really been blessed with the community, mainly our what we say our one founding members, because Irizen is a foundation, and among the founders we find also OCP. So as early as 2013, Irizen was founded in 2011. So 2013, Irizen has approached OCP with a vision. OCP and Irizen, a big group, but and a small, let's say, research institute 10 years ago, with an idea of let's say taking the train on the go, and the idea of trying to have a platform to demystify technology and to do everything I told you before, to test, validate, and also localize some expertise. And this is what, with the trust and also support of OCP, we have succeeded in having this green energy park, which is a kind of somehow a bridge between the academia, the lab scale, and the industrial scale. So we are somehow in an intermediate level of technology and innovation, what we call technology readiness levels. We are in intermediate technology readiness levels. And the idea is to put into contact the needs of industry with the ideas of the researchers and the engineers. So this is what we try to or succeeded to bring. So we have done this once for the solar and the photovoltaic technologies. That was the Green Energy Park. Then we duplicated to a second platform called Green and Smart Building Park to touch base on innovation in buildings, energy efficiency, smart grids, and e-mobility. And then we are together with OCP and UM6P now working on our third joint tech platform called Green H2A, which is dedicated to innovations in green hydrogen and applications. So this is how we are trying to, as I mentioned, take the train on the go, not a lot to waste time into redeveloping what is a battery, what is an electrolyzer. We have also a part of a strong fundamental, or let's say early stage research that is carried out in the universities, in the University of Mohammed VI Polytechnic. But we are trying to build on this expertise to try to scale up and look forward to the market. So in this regards, I'm really proud to have contributed as Irizen with the support of OCP and the UM6P to bring to life the first megawatt scale plant of green ammonia. That was something that we discussed with OCP in 2018, nearly 6 years ago, and now it's taking place. It's being shaped. It's under EPC contract for the moment, and it will happen in Jean-Flasfa in less than 1 year. So we're really proud of this journey, and this kind of infrastructure will really help to get data. And data is key because we have models, we have mathematical models, equations, Excel files, etc. But nothing is equal to real data. What is the output of this machine? What is the output? What is the efficiency? So you can have whatever efficiencies from the commercials, from the sales people, but when you have the machine, you test it, then you have the real data. And this data is really key to the endeavors that Amin was mentioning of OCP and other private also companies. International companies are also interested by this kind of infrastructure because we have integrated a lot of features that could help simulate not only the conditions of Morocco, but also the conditions of let's say the best sites in the world in terms of renewable energies. So that is a kind of a small contribution that we are bringing to the table. This is our part of the job, and we need also to work together with the, let's say, the big boys to make this upscaling go really without I mean de-risking those big projects and maximizing the output. And last but not least, I will probably seize the opportunity that Sislawi is with us because he is the guy we're looking for. in a way, I've been always speaking in a when.
You welcome, CSM.
Sorry.
I said just you welcome with pleasure.
Barakallahu fik. Thank you so much. No, because the idea is, as Amin said, it's a big thing. I mean, hydrogen, for example, is a big thing, but we need to build ecosystem around it. And if you want to have also a small appreciation of the numbers, for example, for 1 gigawatt of electrolyzers, we will need 2 gigawatts of renewables. So the booming of the hydrogen industry, for example, will be for sure a booming of renewable industry. And then we are now today, yesterday, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, with the renewable Moroccan energy plan, we were speaking about 100 megawatts projects, 200 megawatt projects. Now the ticket, the ticket for these hydrogen projects is the gigawatts, and those figures are really now making people think of bringing an industry that doesn't, or that we were really, I mean, desperate to have, like silicon, for example, silicon industry, which is now casually 100% concentrated in China. So this is kind of thinking we need to have with people like Sislawi to try to think smart, because the movement or the moves that Morocco made 15 years ago with the automobile were really smart. I mean, that was kind of a bet. Morocco has had a vision with the first constructor of automobile, and then it has developed in time. Now, in less than 10 years or 15 years, the automobile industry, has doubled the turnover of OCP, which is a 100-year company. So this is also to see and to envisage the future and the potential of this hydrogen industry ecosystem that could probably 10-folds or 20-folds what the automobile is today, which is massive for a developing country like Morocco.
Which is massive and exciting indeed, and it's really exciting to see how partnerships such as the one you described between Irathen and OCP are flourishing, and we certainly need more more African champions and more collaborations of this sort in order to drive the agenda forward. I see many more questions, so I'm going to make sure that we're going to keep our 15 minutes at least at the end of this webinar to address some of your questions in the audience. Merci beaucoup à toutes et à tous pour vos questions. N'hésitez surtout pas à indiquer aussi à qui vous adressez votre question. Mettez-moi le nom de la personne, comme ça on sera sûr de faire le dispatch aux bonnes personnes par la suite. Je me tourne vers vous, Monsieur Hicham Slaoui. On voit qu'il y a donc des opportunités de collaboration. On voit que on parle beaucoup d'énergie donc renouvelable, d'énergie nouvelle, et quel que soit le type d'énergie, il va falloir qu'on la stocke quelque part. Donc c'est un petit peu votre spécialité. Quel est l'enjeu globalement pour ce segment et qu'est-ce qu'on cherche à faire au juste dans une démarche sustainability?
Alors, l'enjeu, c'est quoi? C'est encore une fois une opportunité aujourd'hui pour le Maroc et pour l'Afrique. Parce qu'on voit, il y a une réglementation à l'échelle mondiale, en particulier pour les véhicules. À partir de 2035, il y aura normalement interdiction de produire des véhicules thermiques. Et bon, normalement, ça sera de l'électrique. Ce qui veut dire, en d'autres termes, que le marché va passer, il était à 250 gigawattheures à peu près en 2020, devrait passer à plus que 2,2 TWh au minimum, parce que ça dépend des études, ce qui représente une opportunité très importante pour le Maroc, mais pas que. Bon, je pense aujourd'hui, encore une fois, comme on l'a discuté depuis le début, parce que si on voudrait avoir notre part de gâteau, en fait, du marché mondial qui va augmenter et qui va se développer d'une façon juste incroyable, il faut être compétitif, et il faudrait développer la compétence. Et donc, en gros, développer cet écosystème. Il faudrait qu'on commence. Notre vision aujourd'hui, c'est qu'on doit d'abord commencer par développer l'écosystème. Comment? Est-ce qu'on va attendre plusieurs temps pour commencer quelque chose? On se dit qu'il faudrait qu'on cherche une technologie actuelle qui est bonne et qui est compétitive pour commencer quelque chose. Sachant que au niveau de l'université, il y a des recherches très intéressantes. On a vu les résultats, on les compare par rapport à ce qui se passe ailleurs. À l'échelle laboratoire, on est bon. Et si ça se confirmera, ça va nous permettre de créer plus de compétitivité à notre produit. Donc, on va faire en parallèle. On va développer un petit peu la compétence et développer avec la technologie actuelle. Et on accompagnera le développement de la technologie nationale. Là, il y a des brevets. J'espère qu'au Maroc, on va développer encore et encore parce que c'est ça ce qui va faire la différence et surtout pour la batterie en particulier. Parce que la batterie, c'est quand même une technologie, la batterie lithium-ion, pas de plan, pas de démarrage, bien évidemment. C'est une technologie relativement nouvelle, développée surtout en Asie. Ils ont beaucoup d'innovation, mais il y a encore de la place à l'innovation et le développement, ce qui représente une opportunité. Au niveau du Maroc, l'automobile lui-même, c'est une opportunité. Parce qu'on sera à 1 million de véhicules en capacité. Aujourd'hui, la majorité sont destinés à l'export, en particulier en Europe. Donc, ça veut dire qu'il y aura nécessairement des véhicules électriques qui seront produits au niveau du Maroc, ce qui donne une opportunité. Maintenant, on n'est pas les seuls. Nous, on se dit qu'on va développer au maximum, mais on ne va pas perdre du temps. Et en même temps, on est réellement ouvert à tout partenariat avec un fabricant de Renault, mais conditions obligatoires, c'est le développement de ces technologies localement et le développement du know-how pour les Marocains qu'on voudrait accompagner. C'est ça, c'est ce qu'on cherche. Parce que si on ne développe pas la compétence marocaine, si on ne développe pas le know-how marocain, on sera toujours dépassé et on sera toujours dépendant aux autres. C'est dans un cadre win-win. Eux, quand même, le Maroc, il y a des conditions favorables et très intéressantes en termes de libre-échange, en termes d'incentives, en termes de coût d'énergie renouvelable, parce que n'oublions pas qu'on est moins cher que plusieurs pays dans le monde. Et aujourd'hui, il y a la taxe carbone. Si on voudrait exporter vers l'Europe, on doit vraiment être compétitif pour être en termes de coût d'énergie, d'électricité en particulier, pour espérer exporter en Europe. Donc, en gros, le plus important, c'est ce développement de l'écosystème à travers l'innovation, à travers ces hommes et ces femmes et à travers éventuellement un partenariat pour lequel on est ouvert.
Merci, merci beaucoup pour ce partage et merci à tous pour vos partages sur ces quelques initiatives qui sont en cours et aussi sur votre vision des enjeux. Thank you all for sharing insights into the ongoing initiatives. Your contributions have provided us with a valuable overview of the projects you're currently engaged in. Now, I would like, before we wrap up and before we take some questions from the audience, because I think that's a very important part of this discussion, I'd like to shift our focus to the topic of African collaboration. So in light of the challenges we face in achieving net zero emissions, how can African nations come together more effectively to address these shared concerns? Dr. Stemer Rashidi, would you like to go first?
I'm so sorry, dear Manal, I didn't hear the question.
So the question is about how African nations can come together more effectively to address these shared concerns. Do you have any perspective to share on that?
I mean, the best collaborations, I mean, beyond the together starts with people, in my opinion. So in our context, with the technology platform we are developing, we are enhancing a lot the exchanges of experts, of PhD students, and also of junior researchers. So this is how we in-house we could shape and craft the premises of a bigger collaboration. Those collaborations that start small really very strong and last in time. So we are developing this kind of schemes together with lots of African, let's say, universities and also research centers. We are also having collaborations with the Middle East, with Egypt, etc., to try to get together into the path of sustainability. What I would really mention about the cooperation, let's say South Korea, it's a bit I mean outdated as a concept, but we have a lot in common. We have the same constraints approximately. We lack technology. We lack I mean massive investments amounts, etc. And we have also somehow the same boundary conditions in terms of conditions, natural conditions, etc. So we have a lot of we have a lot to learn from each other, and the gap between us is low. So the learning could be really quick and very impactful. And this is why Morocco, in many cases, is chosen. It's not because we are Moroccan, but this is reality. We are chosen as a part of a triangular cooperation between, for example, advanced technology, let's say, countries and African countries. So we have this example of trilateral cooperation because Morocco, I mean, supports this kind of scheme as a SAS, as an adaptation SAS, in order to make a bigger impact and a more optimal impact of the collaboration between North and South, because we need also to look for
Thank you very much, Dr. Samir. I think your line was breaking a little bit by the end, but we definitely got the idea. I mean, Hussein, I saw you nodding your head all while Dr. Samir was speaking. Would you like to react on that? What is your thought on the African cooperation to push the agenda forward?
Yeah, no, there is a lot to say about that, but maybe just sharing my thoughts here. You know, we are moving from, on some areas, from a model that have been, you know, for the past 30, 40 years, relying on where the energy, the fossil resources were localized. And that model we have seen in the past years for many reasons. Sustainability is one, but also, you know, there is this awareness of everyone that sovereignty, you know, having the opportunity also to contribute to some parts of the value chains as we described in the beginning, become more and more high on the agenda of many countries. And I think that for Africa, that has a potential in terms of land, it has a potential in terms of renewable resources. Of course, a great potential in terms of its youth, people that are eager actually to contribute to all this change. For Africa, this is a new opportunity in which you know, the decentralization of the production of many components globally can find now its location in some African countries where there is a perfect fit for it to happen. And I think that is typically the opportunity on which we need to build. And secondly, I think we are also, for, again, not for everything, but for some part of the manufacturing industry, we are exiting from a model where there was one standard for everyone to many standards. And I think customization becomes really important. And this is where Africa needs to customize also what it wants to do with the energy, with the manufactured products, and how it will basically leverage that customization to best address its needs. I mean, I can mention an example in the fertilizer business, because this is also the background business of our company. Customization of fertilizers is definitely something that is, let's say, a clear will from the company, but also a need to better address basically the agriculture in Africa. And so this customization, this is typically what I believe is an area of collaboration between countries in Africa. As Dr. Samir mentioned, we have sometimes the same boundary conditions, we have sometimes the same setups in which a model can be replicated, and in which we can get inspired each other by what African countries are creatively developing. So I think we have a great history of, and it is part of our DNA on how to develop inclusive business models, how to have a social impact. We have today this opportunity through customization to play a key role in localizing part of the value chains. And I think we have a great area of collaboration between Africans to get inspired and to replicate models that are seen to be successful in one part of Africa to another. And I think this is key, because I want also to emphasize this point. There is a window of opportunity, and that window of opportunity for now is open, and we need to move fast. We need to move fast because everyone is moving at the same time. And I think we have today, the opportunity to also build and shape what will be the future of tomorrow, a future that will also accommodate the needs of Africans and will fit to their DNA, to their culture, and the way they perceive also let's say the development of a sustainable economy in Africa.
Thank you very much, Amin. Thank you very much indeed for sharing that. Before we wrap up, je vais me tourner vers vous, Monsieur Hicham Slaoui, avant qu'on prenne quelques questions. Nous sommes un petit peu on a passé 1 heure et 9 minutes et je garde un œil sur l'heure. Donc, nous allons bien prendre quelques instants à la fin pour prendre vos questions dans l'audience. N'hésitez pas à continuer à nous en soumettre. Le mot de la fin, il est pour vous, Monsieur Hicham Slaoui. En synthèse et sur la base de ce qui a été dit jusqu'à présent, quel serait votre top 3 de priorités ou de recommandations pour valoriser les ressources africaines en faveur du zéro émission nette thématique de ce jour?
Merci pour cette question. Je pense, on en a parlé tous un petit peu. Moi, je pense la clé pour la réussite. On a besoin tous l'un des autres, les Africains, on a besoin de développer un écosystème à l'échelle nationale et à l'échelle globale au niveau de l'Afrique. Ce sera que bénéfique pour tout le monde. Moi, je pense le plus important, c'est l'innovation, le développement de la compétence et puis la valorisation de la matière première et la valorisation des produits en cherchant le maximum d'intégration locale.
Parfait. Merci pour ces 3 points extrêmement clairs. This has been a wonderful panel. It's about time for us to wrap up. But before we do that, I want to take time to acknowledge our audience once again and to thank you all for being with us here. So now we're going to take some questions from the audience. Alors, la première question, et je vais l'afficher, c'est Monsieur Salahdin Harshish qui dit: Monsieur Slaoui, quel est votre avis sur l'impact attendu de l'adoption rapide de technologies comme l'Internet des objets et l'intelligence artificielle sur la production automobile dans les années à venir?
Non, merci pour cette question, c'est Salahdin. Ce qu'il faudrait savoir, juste pour la parenthèse, pour dire que le Maroc, il y a des choses qui se font quand même. Parce que, par exemple, le calculateur principal des voitures PSA, aujourd'hui, il est contrôlé au Maroc. Il est développé et amélioré au Maroc, ce qui est excellent. Donc, ça veut dire qu'on donne l'importance à ça et puis on crée de plus en plus de valeur ajoutée au Maroc. À l'échelle globale, aujourd'hui, c'est le consommateur qui décide, en quelque sorte, parce que le consommateur veut ses options et il veut les voir et il cherche le maximum de confort. Donc, c'est un besoin, en quelque sorte, du consommateur qui cherche besoin. Et puis, les constructeurs, il me semble, ils devraient juste suivre et chercher le maximum d'innovation dans ce domaine d'intelligence artificielle.
Super, merci beaucoup. Alors, prochaine question de Madame Nejwa Chaouri. Donc, ma question est adressée à Dr Samir Rachid. Est-ce qu'il y a des mini-projets Smart Grid qui exploitent les énergies renouvelables pour l'électrification des zones rurales? Dr Samir Rachidi, je ne sais pas si vous avez entendu la question.
Oui, tout à fait, je l'ai entendu, je l'ai vu aussi. Effectivement, c'est une très bonne question. Pour la partie smart grids ou réseau intelligent, on a la chance, Dieu merci, je réponds en français vu que la question est en français. Ça vous dérange pas, c'est bon?
Parfait.
D'accord, très bien.
Tout à fait,
Donc,
parfaitement.
du coup, nous avons la chance d'avoir justement au sein de ce qu'on appelle le Green and Smart Building Park, la plateforme qui est dédiée à l'efficacité énergétique dans le bâtiment et les réseaux intelligents du coup. Nous avons la chance d'avoir accueilli un don en nature de la Corée, qui est un simulateur de réseau. Donc, c'est le plus grand d'Afrique, tout simplement. Et d'où justement cette fierté aussi d'avoir poussé ce projet grâce aussi au soutien, comme j'ai dit, de l'écosystème de l'UM6P et de l'OCP. Et grâce à cet équipement-là, des collègues à moi qui sont basés à Ben Guerir peuvent simuler le réseau d'une ville africaine, et avec plusieurs scénarios, en ayant aussi de la puissance solaire, de la puissance du réseau, de la puissance aussi de l'éolien, de la batterie, du stockage. Et c'est vraiment très important. En plus, bien sûr, couvert aussi de plusieurs curriculums de formation. Donc ça, c'est pour la partie, on va dire, infrastructure, en termes de moyens pour développer des scénarios, etc. pour l'autre volet de projet, dans le cadre de IRSN, qui est aussi sous la tutelle du ministère de l'Énergie, nous avons aussi promu des appels à projets innovants impliquant les universités et les entreprises marocaines. Donc, à ce titre, nous avons financé depuis 2012 à peu près 80 projets. Et sur les 80 projets, il y a à peu près une dizaine qui apportent sur les réseaux intelligents, l'interaction aussi du renouvelable, l'implication aussi du photovoltaïque pour les réseaux, pour les zones rurales. Et nous avons à ce propos un projet qui s'appelle Tahala Grid, que vos auditeurs peuvent consulter en se rendant sur le site web de IRSN, irsn.org, sur la partie appel à projet ou projet financé. On a à peu près une cartographie de ces 80 projets et ils peuvent aller directement pour accéder aux livrables et aux différents aspects de ces projets-là. Donc, on commence à peine à toucher effectivement cette thématique qui est très importante, notamment dans ce contexte un petit peu difficile de post-tremblement de terre qui a touché la région de Marrakech, où l'éclairage solaire, les réseaux, on va dire, off-grid, deviennent un peu d'actualité et urgents. Donc, c'est des choses sur lesquelles des chercheurs marocains à l'université marocaine, mais aussi des entreprises marocaines, sur lesquelles ont déjà travaillé et peuvent apporter des solutions intéressantes.
Merci beaucoup, Dr. Samir Rachidi, pour ces éléments. So we have another question here from Aziz Eid El Qatia. It's intended for you, Amin. He says, hi all. Beyond international standards, regulation on sustainability is still poor in Morocco. Bioenergy, carbon emission, it is still poor to accompany especially exportations. What is intended for this issue? So a question about regulation here.
Yeah, thank you. Indeed, I think yes, we can of course reflect on the regulations that will be implemented in Morocco. But I think if we see it as us being part of a global value chain, I think the direction is pretty clear. Since many years already, CO2 have been, let's say, identified as one of the main contributors to the greenhouse gas, let's say, emissions and climate change. And therefore, there is in many countries around the world policies that are in place to contravene the emissions of this CO2. And I think it was just a matter of time before, let's say, these policies become, let's say, with global effects. And this is what we see today with the implementation, for example, of the carbon border adjustment mechanism for Europe. We see also other countries that start thinking about taxations for CO2. So indeed, there is not only countries that are pushing their own industry to decarbonize by giving basically a clear price signal to CO2, but they are also willing actually to let's say influence the global emissions in other countries by taxation at their borders to make sure that whatever is imported is actually in the level playing field in terms of taxation with the domestically produced products. So I think for Morocco, it's definitely it's a country that is definitely part of this value chain, because a lot of our exportations are also going to be concerned by this type of taxation globally. And I think it is for us actually to develop locally, the incentives that will support the competitiveness of Moroccan products at the export. So definitely our let's say our challenge is not only to decarbonize our own industry, but it's also to make sure that the competitiveness of Morocco is safeguarded from a taxation standpoint when we export our products, but also that we develop in Morocco a brand of sustainable products that is not only trying to let's say accommodate the business constraints from a taxation standpoint, but that is also setting an example for the rest and contributing globally to bringing solutions in terms of decarbonization for part of those value chains. So again, I think that today, there is always the carrot and the stick. I think today, as Moroccans and Africans, we need really to contemplate the carrot much more than the stick. We want actually this sustainability and energy transition to be a lever for development in Africa, to be a lever for industry development in Africa, and for new, I would say, new economical development for people in Africa. So I think I'm always eager to see it this way, to try to actually promote an industry that will have a clear competitive advantage, but that will set actually also a contribution globally to the task that we all have in hand.
Thank you very much, Emin, for sharing that. So we're taking one final question before we wrap up from Facebook to make a change. Please do not hesitate to reach out to us on LinkedIn. We're all on LinkedIn. So I'm sorry we cannot cover all the questions, but do connect with us on LinkedIn and reach out with your questions. We'll be more than happy to follow up. So the question is from Selma Wardi on Facebook. Elle demande, est-ce que l'hydrogène vert peut être traité comme une source d'énergie lumineuse ou est-ce que c'est trop cher pour être utilisé? Je laisse la question à nos experts, celui d'entre vous qui souhaite prendre cette question.
Samuel voulait nous éclairer sur le sujet ou...
Si vous me permettez, je peux essayer de répondre à cette question. Enfin, l'hydrogène en tant que vecteur d'énergie, effectivement, peut servir à beaucoup de choses. On peut utiliser l'hydrogène dans les voitures, on peut utiliser l'hydrogène. Nous, on préconise dans la feuille de route de l'hydrogène qu'on a développée il y a 3 ans avec les parties prenantes, c'est utiliser l'hydrogène là où il est très efficace et très impactant pour la réduction des gaz à effet de serre, donc pour la décarbonation. Et quand vous prenez cet axe d'analyse, et ben, du coup, l'hydrogène, il est beaucoup plus pertinent dans l'industrie lourde, ce qu'on dit en anglais « the hard to abate sectors » or « the hard to electrify sectors ». Parce qu'il faut vraiment prendre l'hydrogène dans un concept global de la décarbonation. Et pour arriver à la décarbonation, ben, il y a plusieurs leviers. On commence d'abord par faire de l'efficacité énergétique, de l'efficience énergétique, isolation, digitalisation, etc. Après, dans un deuxième temps, ou en parallèle, ce n'est pas des choses, des streams séparés, on intègre du renouvelable dans notre réseau électrique. Après, du coup, pour verdifier l'électricité, donc l'électricité, c'est une énergie qui est beaucoup utilisée. Après, il reste un bulk, une masse d'applications qui ne peut pas être électrifiée verdement, excusez-moi les néologismes, ou qui ne peuvent pas, pour lesquels réduire des émissions est difficile. Dans l'industrie lourde, par exemple, ce qu'a dit Amin, sur les fertilisants, sur l'acier, sur toute la pétrochimie, même si ce n'est pas le bon terme quand on va utiliser l'hydrogène vert. Donc, et les carburants aussi pour les bateaux, on va difficilement électrifier un bateau, un avion, sur le court et moyen terme, c'est difficile. Des gros transporteurs, de gros avions, de long courrier électriques, c'est peut-être pas pour tout de suite. Et du coup, c'est là où l'hydrogène, il est à fort impact. Et c'est là où on doit concentrer notre effort. Après, quand le marché se développera à travers ces grandes applications, ensuite, on pourra effectivement faire baisser le coût pour pouvoir l'hydrogène dans le chauffage, la climatisation des bâtiments, la production d'électricité, de lumière, de ce que dit votre auditrice sur ce volet-là. Mais moi, je dirais en tant que militant pour l'hydrogène, je prioriserai ces applications qui sont, on va dire, inévitables pour l'hydrogène.
Merci beaucoup, Dr. Samir Rachidi, pour cet éclairage. Merci à tous. This has been a wonderful panel. Thank you so much for spending your most precious asset with us, which is your time. It's about time for us to wrap up. I want to thank our speakers for participating and making this a great session. I want us all to give them a round of applause. So let's please do. Again, thank you, everyone, co-hosts, speakers, audience. I will see you all next week, same time, same day, for another insightful conversation of Voice of Africa high-level sustainability dialogues. Until then, thank you, keep well, and this concludes our broadcast. Thank you.